The year is 1875. In a quiet Swiss village by the lake, a boy is born who will one day unlock the secret language of dreams. His name is Carl Gustav Jung. From the very beginning, Jung's world is divided between light and shadow. By day, he plays like any other child. But at night, when the lamps burn low and silence settles over the house, he senses something deeper, something strange moving within the human soul. This boy doesn't just live in the outside world, he lives in the inner world too. And it is this double life that will later transform him into one of the greatest explorers of the unconscious mind. Childhood. Between Two Worlds. Carl Jung's father was a pastor, a man of religion, duty, and rational sermons. Yet young Carl often saw doubt in his father's eyes. To Jung, the faith of the church seemed too thin, too fragile to answer the great mysteries of life. His mother, on the other hand, was different. At times warm and loving, at times distant and moody. She seemed to slip into another personality at night. She spoke in voices that weren't quite hers, as though another presence lived within her. This frightened Jung, but it also fascinated him. He once said that his first real encounter with the unconscious came not through books, but through the strange moods of his mother. It was as if she carried the hidden depths of existence inside her. As a child, Jung began creating secret rituals. He carved a little wooden figure, placed it in a box, and hid it in the attic. Whenever he was troubled, he would return to this hidden treasure, whispering his thoughts to it. To an outsider, it might have looked like a boy's silly game, but for Jung, it was sacred. He felt that the little figure connected him to another realm, a world beyond the ordinary. Even as a boy, he was building bridges into the unconscious. The student becomes the doctor. Fast forward to Jung's teenage years. He was brilliant, but lonely, always torn between two sides of himself. On one side, the rational student who studied Latin, Greek, and science. On the other, the dreamer who lost himself in visions, fantasies, and powerful inner images. He went on to study medicine at the University of Basel. At first, he thought he might become a surgeon, but then something happened that changed his destiny. Jung picked up a thick, dusty book called Psychopathology Sexualis by Richard von Krafft-Ebing. It was about mental illness, strange desires, and the hidden forces behind human behavior. As Jung read, a spark ignited. He realized that the human mind, especially its dark, hidden parts, was far more fascinating than the human body. And so, Jung decided to become a psychiatrist. He began working at the Burghölzli Hospital in Zurich, one of the most advanced psychiatric hospitals in Europe. There he met patients who saw visions, heard voices, and spoke in strange symbols. Most doctors dismissed these as mere madness, but Jung listened. He wanted to know, why do these people see what they see? What are their minds trying to say? This curiosity led him to create experiments with word association. He would say a word, and the patient would respond with the first thing that came to mind. But Jung noticed something unusual. Sometimes the patients hesitated. Sometimes their answers revealed hidden fears or secret feelings. This was proof, Jung believed, that there were forces inside the mind that people weren't even aware of. Forces that shaped their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In short, the unconscious. The meeting with Freud. By the early 1900s, Jung's work had attracted attention across Europe, and one man in particular noticed him: Sigmund Freud. Freud was already famous as the father of psychoanalysis. He believed that at the core of all dreams and mental problems was one hidden force: sexuality. When Jung and Freud finally met in 1907, they talked for 13 straight hours. Imagine that. Two of the greatest minds in psychology, locked in conversation as if they had known each other forever. Freud saw in Jung not just a talented psychiatrist, but a potential successor, someone who could carry psychoanalysis into the future. For a while, Jung admired Freud deeply. He respected Freud's courage in exploring taboo subjects like sex and repression. But soon, cracks began to form. Jung felt Freud's theory was too narrow, too focused on sexuality alone. Jung's own patients reported dreams filled with myths, gods, monsters, and ancient symbols. To Jung, these weren't just disguises for sexual desire. They were something far greater, messages from the deep layers of the human psyche. The break with Freud. The relationship between Freud and Jung eventually collapsed. What started as respect turned into disappointment, even betrayal. Freud insisted that dreams were simply wish fulfillments, expressions of repressed desires. Jung disagreed. He argued that dreams had a creative function. They weren't just reflections of the past, but also guides toward the future. The break was painful. Jung had once seen Freud as a father figure. Losing him felt like losing a part of himself. But this separation also freed Jung. It allowed him to develop his own psychology, one that would revolutionize the way we think about dreams. And out of this experience came his mysterious masterpiece, The Red Book. In these pages, Jung recorded conversations with mythic characters, gods, demons, and symbolic images that haunted his inner world. To many, this might look like madness, but Jung believed it was the path to healing and transformation. By confronting the unconscious directly, he believed he could bring its wisdom into conscious life. From this experience, Jung developed analytical psychology, his own school of thought. Unlike Freud's psychoanalysis, which focused mainly on sexuality and repression, Jung's psychology was about wholeness. He believed that every human being carries both light and shadow, both conscious and unconscious, both the person we show the world and the hidden self we bury within. And at the center of this idea was one simple truth: dreams are the key. Dreams, Jung argued, are the voice of the unconscious. They are the bridge between the known and the unknown, between who we are and who we might become. To understand dreams is to understand the soul itself. So this is where our story begins, with a boy who carved little figures in secret, who listened to the whispers of his patients, who argued with Freud, and finally dared to follow his own visions. Carl Jung was not just a doctor, he was an explorer of the human spirit. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into Jung's dream theory itself. Why do we dream? What purpose do dreams serve? And how can they guide us toward balance, healing, and transformation? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine drifting into sleep. The world of noise fades away. Your body rests, but your mind begins to weave images, some familiar, others strange, even terrifying. A friend suddenly becomes a stranger. A house turns into a labyrinth. A flight takes you above the clouds. You wake up, sometimes laughing, sometimes sweating, but always wondering, what was that? For most of history, people thought dreams were messages from the gods, omens of the future, or simply nonsense. But for Carl Jung, dreams were none of these. To him, dreams were the hidden voice of the unconscious, the part of our mind that speaks in symbols, stories, and images when our waking self is silent. The unconscious. Jung's hidden world. Jung believed that the mind has two layers. The conscious mind is what we use every day, our thoughts, logic, and decisions. But beneath it lies the unconscious, a vast and mysterious ocean filled with forgotten memories, repressed feelings, and even ancient symbols shared by all of humanity. He often compared the conscious mind to a small island and the unconscious to the endless sea around it. When we dream, it is as if the sea rises and washes over the island, carrying strange creatures, hidden treasures, and dark shadows onto the shore. But unlike Freud, who believed the unconscious was mostly a storehouse of repressed desires, especially sexual ones, Jung saw it as something more profound. To him, the unconscious wasn't just a dump of old memories. It was a living, creative force, a kind of inner guide that pushes us toward growth and transformation. The compensatory function of dreams. So why do we dream? According to Jung, dreams serve a compensatory function. That means they balance what's missing in our waking life. Imagine someone who appears confident and successful on the outside. In their dreams, they might constantly see themselves lost, weak, or unprepared. Why? Because their unconscious is trying to remind them of their vulnerability, to balance their one-sided personality. Or take another example, a person who ignores their creative side, working only with logic and numbers. In their dreams, they might encounter vivid colors, strange music, or magical landscapes. The unconscious is pushing them toward what they've ignored. In this way, dreams don't just reflect reality, they correct it. They show us what we need, not what we already know. They are the psyche's way of restoring balance, like a compass that points toward the parts of ourselves we've left behind. Dreams as guides to the future. Jung also believed that dreams weren't only about the past. They could also point toward the future, toward what he called the process of individuation. Individuation is Jung's idea of becoming whole. It's the lifelong journey of integrating all parts of the self, the light and the dark, the strengths and the flaws, into one balanced person. Dreams, Jung said, often anticipate this process. They show us who we could become if we are willing to listen. A dream might reveal a hidden talent, a buried fear that needs to be faced, or an image of the self, the deeper, more complete version of us waiting to be born. For example, someone might dream of climbing a mountain. At first, it seems meaningless, but Jung would ask, what does this mountain symbolize? Perhaps it's the dreamer's life challenge, the great task they must face to grow. The dream is not telling them what they already know, it is showing them what they could become. Personal unconscious versus collective unconscious. One of Jung's most revolutionary ideas was the distinction between the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious is easy to understand. It contains your forgotten memories, your repressed emotions, your personal experiences. If you dream of your old school or of a fight you never resolved, that's the personal unconscious speaking. But Jung went further. He argued that deep beneath the personal layer is a collective unconscious, a kind of universal memory shared by all humans. This is why people across cultures dream of similar themes: falling, flying, being chased, encountering wise old men, or battling monsters. These recurring dream figures, Jung explained, are archetypes, ancient patterns of human experience. They are the common language of humanity's unconscious mind. A child in India, a farmer in Africa, and a businessman in America might all dream of a shadowy figure, a nurturing mother, or a hero's journey. Why? Because these symbols are not just personal. They belong to all of us. Examples of Jung's dream interpretations. Jung didn't just theorize, he worked with real patients and their dreams. One patient kept dreaming of a house. At first, the house had only one floor. Then, in later dreams, the patient discovered a basement and even deeper tunnels. Jung explained that this was the unconscious showing layers of the psyche, from the surface down to the most ancient collective layers. Another patient dreamed of encountering a snake that terrified her. Freud might have interpreted this as a sexual symbol, but Jung saw the snake as a symbol of transformation, shedding old skin for new. The dream wasn't about fear, it was about growth. These interpretations reveal Jung's core belief: dreams are not problems to be solved, but messages to be understood. The dream as dialogue. For Jung, every dream is like a letter from the unconscious. The problem is, it's written in a symbolic language. Our job is to translate it, and once we do, we enter into a dialogue with our deeper self. This dialogue, Jung believed, is essential for mental health. When we ignore our dreams, we cut ourselves off from half of who we are. But when we listen, we invite balance, wisdom, and even healing. So why do we dream? For Carl Jung, the answer is clear. We dream to heal, to balance, and to grow. Our dreams reveal the truths we ignore, the paths we fear, and the possibilities we have yet to imagine. They are not random, they are purposeful. In the next part of this journey, we'll go even deeper into the symbolic language of dreams. We'll explore Jung's archetypes, the shadow, the anima and animus, the wise old man, and more. These powerful figures appear again and again in dreams, myths, and stories across the world. And if we learn to recognize them, we may unlock the deepest secrets of our own minds. Something happened that changed his destiny. Jung picked up a thick, dusty book called Psychopathology Sexualis by Richard von Krafft-Ebing. It was about mental illness, strange desires, and the hidden forces behind human behavior. As Jung read, a spark ignited. He realized that the human mind, especially its dark, hidden parts, was far more fascinating than the human body. And so, Jung decided to become a psychiatrist. He began working at the Burghölzli Hospital in Zurich, one of the most advanced psychiatric hospitals in Europe. There he met patients who saw visions, heard voices, and spoke in strange symbols. Most doctors dismissed these as mere madness, but Jung listened. He wanted to know, why do these people see what they see? What are their minds trying to say? This curiosity led him to create experiments with word association. He would say a word, and the patient would respond with the first thing that came to mind. But Jung noticed something unusual. Sometimes the patients hesitated. Sometimes their answers revealed hidden fears or secret feelings. This was proof, Jung believed, that there were forces inside the mind that people weren't even aware of. Forces that shaped their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In short, the unconscious. The meeting with Freud. By the early 1900s, Jung's work had attracted attention across Europe, and one man in particular noticed him: Sigmund Freud. Freud was already famous as the father of psychoanalysis. He believed that at the core of all dreams and mental problems was one hidden force: sexuality. When Jung and Freud finally met in 1907, they talked for 13 straight hours. Imagine that. Two of the greatest minds in psychology, locked in conversation as if they had known each other forever. Freud saw in Jung not just a talented psychiatrist, but a potential successor, someone who could carry psychoanalysis into the future. For a while, Jung admired Freud deeply. He respected Freud's courage in exploring taboo subjects like sex and repression. But soon, cracks began to form. Jung felt Freud's theory was too narrow, too focused on sexuality alone. Jung's own patients reported dreams filled with myths, gods, monsters, and ancient symbols. To Jung, these weren't just disguises for sexual desire. They were something far greater,